Welcome to the session. Thank you all for joining. I'll start by introducing myself. Next slide. So, I'm Anmol Bajpai. I'm a game developer. I've been making games since the past 2 years. And I've worked with a company that makes hyper casual games, the kind of games like Flappy Bird that we're going to make today. So the hyper casual games are games that have minimal functionality, like just the press of a button, like Flappy Bird has. So we're gonna. I made games like these for 5 months for a company. The company's name was Caravel Tech, and now I'm working on a personal project that is a survival game that is made on Unreal Engine, and it will be released in this December. I'll show you a little sneak peek of the game as well. Okay, so next slide. So this is the agenda for today. I'll start by introducing game development, then I'll tell you how you can get started, then I'll tell you what Metahumans are and how to make custom Metahumans. Then I'll tell you how to install and download the Unity engine. You don't have to do it right now. You just listen to me and understand the process, and you can go home and do it later. You'll get the recording of this session. Then we'll make the Flappy Bird the game. This is the agenda. This is the main agenda of today's session. And then peek into Envision. That is the little sneak peek of the game that I'm making. And then at the end of the session, I'm going to provide some learning resources to all of you, which you can. It's a GitHub repo. You can scan it. You can scan the QR code and get the link to the GitHub repo, and get some good learning resources that can help you get started with your game dev journey. Next. Okay, so introduction to game development. So essentially the process of game development is you all have played games, but what's the process behind it? That I'm going to explain. So mainly there are 3 parts to a game development process: design, programming and art. We are going to focus mostly on programming today because how many of us here in the audience have never written any sort of code? It's okay, no problem. Okay, 1. Everybody is familiar with code. That is so cool. You just made my life very easy. Okay, so that's very good. Okay, so programming, design and art. So all of these combined, and then you can have different teams for all of these processes and combine them, and you'll get a game. This is basically the process of how it's done. And next session, next slide. Okay, so these are some of the tools that you can get started with. It's no issue, you can pick any of them. All of them are great tools. Mostly like Unity and Unreal, you can choose any of them. I use both of them. I have not used Cocos or Godot or GameMaker, but I am familiar with Unity and Unreal. So these are both great tools I can highly recommend, and you can get started. You can just go on YouTube and figure out whatever you like, and you can get started with them. So these are the programming languages that you can use. So it's C# and C++, Python and JavaScript. So I've used C# and C++. C# is mostly used with Unity, and C++ is used with Unreal. So today we are gonna write code in C#. I don't think how many of us have written code in C#? Oh, that's great. That's great. So you guys are familiar with game development or any other? Oh, that's good. That's good. Okay. So with Unity, we mostly use C#, and that's what we're going to do today. It's no issue if you have no experience with C#. That's not an issue, because since you all are programmers, so programming is basically logic. It's just the difference of a syntax. So I'm going to tell you, I'm here for that. I'm going to tell you the right syntax, and I'm going to explain what this thing is doing, what thing is doing, and this is how we're going to build the total game. Next slide. Okay, so Metahumans. So what are Metahumans? Metahumans are a framework that is given by Epic Games. that is, so what it does is, like, you can have ultra realistic looking humans inside your games. And now, like, it got released in, I think, 2020, I'm not sure, but it got released. When it initially got released, it was very, it had basic functionality, but now you have a lot of things to customize. You can even, like, create your own custom meta-human, and that is what I did. So, next slide. So, previous. So, this is the meta-human that I created. This is my friend Arnav, who is right over there.
Okay.
So this is Arnav, and this is the meta-human that, is it visible in the back? Are you sure? Should we turn off the lights? Yeah, now it's better. So this is Arnav's meta-human. So does it look similar to him? So this was created by scanning his face. Next slide, please. This is the comparison, and next slide. Can you play this video? Previous. Okay. So this is Arnav's room, and this is me scanning his face using an app called Polycam. So what I did was, the Polycam app, it helped me like take 200 photos of his face from all of the different angles. All of the different angles, you got to cover all of them. So after this was done, it gave me this. It gave me this 3D rendered model that I then imported in Blender. Blender is another 3D modeling software. So this is what you can create just by using an app. So isn't that cool? And then, after this, then I put it in Unreal Engine, and it gave me this. This was the final meta-human that was made, and then I added beard and facial hair and all of that, and edited a little bit of the features. I'll show you the video. I'll link the video in the. I have that GitHub repository, and it has that video that I used as a tutorial to make this, but you can also make it with a little bit of experience and a little bit of understanding. It's not very difficult. You can go home and try, and if you face any difficulties, you can contact me. That's no worries. So, do you like it? Is it similar? That's great. Okay. So now we're going to start the main agenda for today, and that is making Flappy Bird. Okay, thank you. Okay. So let me tell you the story behind Flappy Bird. How many of us have played Flappy Bird? Everybody, almost everybody. It got viral in 2013, and this was the creator. His name was Dang. So he was a creator of Flappy Bird, and it was So he was a creator of Flappy Bird, and he created this game, and it was a very basic functional game. It had just had this tap feature, and this bird had to cross between these pipes. And that is how the score system worked. So very basic functionality, we're going to make it today in just 1 hour. And can you guess the revenue that this game was generating per day? Any guesses? Huh? 20? No, I said per day. Okay, it was generating $50,000 per day. So this guy became a millionaire just by creating this game, this very basic functional game, because the timing was right and everything, and the game got viral. And then he started getting a lot of hate for it, because a lot of people were getting addicted to the game, which was a problem. And then on Twitter and all of those forums, people started complaining about the game, and this guy, he was a very shy guy, so he got really anxious and he deleted the game. So now you'll only find clones of the Flappy Bird on Play Store and App Store, but the original game is now deleted. So that is the basic story of what happened. Now we'll start by making it, okay? Okay, so let's start making it. So the first step is to create a new project. So I'll tell you how to do that. I'm opening Unity. So this is Unity Hub. This is the Unity Hub. Here you can install all the different versions of Unity, and all of your projects are accessed from here. I'll show you how to, I'll link tutorials on how you can install Unity. Many of you already must have installed Unity as well, right? So now we'll create a new project. We'll name the project, we'll first select the template 2D, because Flappy Bird is a 2D game, and then we'll name the project. So what should we name the project? GDSC Flappy Bird. All right. GDSC Flappy Bird. Okay. So now I'm saving the location. I've already selected the location, but you'll have to select it. And then I click on Create Project. It takes a little bit of time. So till the time it's loading, if you have any questions, you can tell me. Any questions till now? Yes. Oh, system requirements for Unity. I'll send it to you, but it's very basic. Like to handle Unity, you need very basic requirements. Like all of your laptops must be having those requirements. But to make it more efficient, this is a gaming laptop, so it has a graphics card and all of that. I have to keep it plugged in all of the time. So these are the challenges that you face with Unity, because it's a very powerful tool and it's very graphic intensive. So like you can see, it takes a lot of time to load as well. So, but it'll be able to run, and you'll be able to run it on any decent laptop. The exact specific requirements, I'll send it to you using that link. Any other questions? Build for?
Will it work on Mac?
Yes, it works on Mac, PC, Windows both. Okay, so here is our new project. Is it visible? Is it visible, everything at the back? All the details, are these visible? Can you see what these are? Can you read this? Not visible. Arnav, can we increase the size of this projector? Acha, okay, koi baat nahi. So I'll tell you what it is. This is the scene tab. Here you have your scene, the Unity scene, that everything you will work in is inside this scene tab. This is the console. All the commands you will give, the errors you will face, all of those will be listed over here. This is the console. Right now it's empty. This is the hierarchy. Everything in your scene is inside this hierarchy. This is the inspector. So what is the inspector? when you click on this any object in the hierarchy, you will get a lot of information about what all is in that object. So, and you can edit it, say like you can change the transform component. So what is the transform component? It is the positions, rotation and scale. Where is the object placed, how big is it, and how is its rotation done. And then this is the project. So what is in project? Everything that you have in your project is inside this tab. Like you can import from your laptop or from your computer the assets that you want to use into this project tab, and then you can import it to your scene and then you can work with it. Then we have this game tab. So in this game tab, this is your rendered game. Everything that is in your game will be here, and then this is the animation. We are not going to focus on animation today, but it is it's a tab, so I'll explain it. You can animate things inside your game, like you must have seen when Flappy Bird loads, it has that animation of like constantly playing and everything. So all of that is done using this animation tab. And then okay, so we covered all of these. Now we'll start with the development. So first step that is going to be is that we are going to change the aspect ratio. Okay, it is in portrait, but just to make sure, we are going to change the aspect ratio from here to 1080 by 1920. That is the aspect ratio for a 2D game, just for a portrait game. That is your mobile screens are like that. Okay, so we have done this. Now we'll go to the project and I'll import the folder okay, so I have a folder. This is the media, this is a folder where I have the sprites. Okay, I'll just import it. I'll import it and then I'll explain what is it. So these are sprites and this is a font, and I'm dragging it over to my project tab. Okay, so now this is the project tab. What are sprites? Sprites are these objects, all of these, like this background and all of these images that are in 2D. These are your sprites. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to set the background first. So for that I'm just going to drag it over here. Okay, this is the background. I have imported it and I'm going to set it to the size of this. Now just to make sure that it is done properly, I'm going to open the game window, and this is how your game is going to look like. So if it's visible, a little bit blue background is still left, so I'm going to move it over here, over a little left. I think now it's better. All right. Just to make sure, I am going to increase the size a little bit. Okay, so we have set the background. Now next we'll add the bird. This is the bird. This is how it's looking in the game. All right, so we've added the bird, and this is the base. Now okay, so I'm adding the base. This is the base of this background over here, but you see this problem. What is happening is that when I'm adding it, it's going behind this background, but we don't want that. If you've seen Flappy Bird, this base is in front of the background, right? So how do we change that? We have to set the order. So this tab over here, this will set the order of this base, and we want to set it to the frontmost screen. Okay. हाँ, थोड़ा सा कैमरा को. Yes. Okay. So we're going to change the order over here. So this is by default set to 0, and we'll check the order of the background. So the order of the background is also set to 0. So if we want to make something in front of something, we have to increase its order. So from 0, I'll set it to 1. And then when I drag this, it comes in front of it. Alright, so we've set the base. Next, what we are going to do, we're going to add a rigid body component to this bird. So I'll explain what a rigid body is. Just a second. Okay, so what is a rigid body? So a rigid body component enables the motion inside any object. So Unity is a physics engine, but by default your physics is not enabled, because for different games you'll need different functionality. You don't want the physics to be enabled always. So right now, if I am not enabling rigid body and I play the game, the bird will stay in its place. But we don't want that. We want gravity to take place, right? Like take its effect. So what we'll do is we'll add a rigid body component. Rigid body 2D, since it's a 2D game. And then when I play it, the bird falls. So it has just added the gravity to the bird. That is what rigid body is. And then we'll also need to check if the bird is colliding with the poles, right? So we'll also have to add a collider. I'll explain what a collider is. So collider. So there are different types of collider: a sphere collider, a box collider. But basically, what collider does is, by default, you do not have a collider attached to a game object, to any object in your scene. But what happens is that if you attach collider to two objects and then they collide with each other, they're going to check, like they're not going to overlap each other. If two objects do not have a collider, they're going to overlap each other. But if they have this collider, it's not going to happen. So that is why we'll add those colliders. So to the bird, we're going to add a capsule collider. Just a second. Capsule collider 2D. And then we'll have to adjust it. This is how you can click on this button, edit collider, and then you can make it a bit smaller. Since the bird is a bit smaller, this would be fine. It's okay. Then okay. So we'll also add the collider to the base. So we'll add a box collider to it because it's in the shape of a rectangle. So we have added colliders to both our bird and our base. So now the next step is scripting. So what is scripting? Scripting is basically writing code. Now why do you need to do scripting? Because you have to tell the Unity engine what all you want to perform inside this. So that functionality we get through code, and code is written inside scripts. So now we're going to make a new folder, create folder, and name it scripts. And inside scripts folder, we're going to create a new C# script. So we'll name the script fly bird, since in this script we'll make the bird fly. Alright. So now I'll open it in Visual Studio Code. This is how it looks when it gets opened. So there is some initial code written for you over here. Now what are these two functions, start and update? I'll explain them. So what are start and update functions? So the start function is called just when the game gets started. So when you hit that play button, the first function that gets called is the start function. And update function, so update function gets called every frame. Like if you want to shoot bullet, for example, if you want to shoot a bullet, just one bullet, you will call a start function. Like at the beginning of the game, if you want to shoot a bullet, you will call this start function and write the code for shooting a bullet. But if you want to constantly keep shooting bullets, you're gonna write a code in the update function. So because the update function gets called every frame, that's the difference between the start and the update function. Now inside the start, inside this script, so the first thing we're going to do is we need the reference. So first I'll tell you what we aim by making this script. We want when the player touches, like when the player taps the phone screen, we want the bird to fly. We want to achieve this. So how are we going to do this? I'll tell you. We're going to access the rigid body first, so that we can edit the force and apply force to it, because rigid body has all the physics components, right? So we are going to edit that. Okay, so in order to edit the rigid body, we have to get access to it. How do we get access to it? We'll initialize it over here. So I'll write okay, so this is how you get access to any component. So private, public, all of these things, all of these are access modifiers. You have different sort of access for different variables. This is a rigid body variable that I've created. I'll name it RB. That's better. Rigid body RB. So, and this is the component that I'm trying to access. So this is telling the engine that this is telling the Visual Studio Code that RB is a rigid body 2D type of component and its access should be private. Private access means that it cannot be accessed outside this script. That is what it means. Okay. So now we are going to make a variable named velocity. Okay. So this is the type of the variable. It's float. It will be float because. So we need to add some velocity to it, some force to it. So we'll add that variable, and then what we'll do, we'll get access to this rigid body when the game starts. So how do we do that? There is a function in this that is get component. This is by default inside C#. So we get component rigid body, and then we specify which sort of component it is, and this is how we get access to the rigid body. Okay. Now what we have to do is that at every frame we have to check if the user is, whether the user is pressing the button, pressing the tap, and if it is tapping, we have to increase the velocity. Everybody understands this? So how do we get this? We add an if statement. So if, now inside if statement, we want to write if the user is pressing the tap. How do we write it? For that, we have this. Input.get mouse button down. So since input.get mouse button down, what it checks is, for the mouse button, it checks that if the user is clicking the left mouse button, the 0 indicates for the left or right. So it is checking that if the user is having the left mouse button pressed, and when it is pressed, you can add some sort of code to it, some sort of functionality to it. So but inside that, when we render for Android, input.get mouse button down, it acts as the tap feature. Like the tap is same as the input.get mouse button down. So we are adding input.get mouse button down. 0 is for the left click, but also for the tap. And then rigid body. This is the rigid body. We're going to add velocity to it. So we're going to change its velocity, and I'll add vector3 dot up. So what is vector3? Just a second, I'll explain first. Vector3 dot up. So what is vector3 for dot up? It is shorthand. If it is not visible over here, I'll explain. I'll just dictate what is written. It is shorthand for writing vector 3 0, 1, 0. So what 0, 1, 0 in the y axis. Since we want the bird to move in the y direction, right? We don't want it to move left or right when we tap. So we want some force to be added in the y component. So we use this vector3 dot up, and then so please, I request everybody to pay a lot of attention, because if you lose things over here, the whole game is based on this, so it will be a problem then. And then we multiply it by the velocity variable that we have created. Alright, now let's check if our code is working. But first, we'll have to attach, so the Unity engine does not know that we want this script to work on which variable, right? Which game object. So what is a game object? I forgot to tell you what is a game object. I'll tell you. So every object in your game is a game object. Every object, like this Flappy Bird, it's a game object. This background, it's a game object. We just name these objects game objects. Okay. So this is the bird, and we'll add the script. I drag the script that I just created to the bird, since we want the bird to follow these things. And then I am going to specify a value for the velocity. I'll say 2, and then when I press play and then I click on my button, the bird, can you see that? So the bird is flapping. Okay. So the next thing what we are going to do is we have to add pipes to it, right?
Why can't we just mention the value of velocity in the script itself?
We can do it, but let's suppose if you want to edit the value, let's suppose, so you'll have to open the script, find the variable, and then you'll have to edit it from over here. But if you make this variable public, it will just display inside below your script over here. Why is this private variable not displayed over here? Because we have made it private. but when you make variables public, they'll get accessed from your Unity editor. So it's a lot easier to access it over here. Then now we're gonna add nice ringtone. Okay. So these are the pipes. Okay. So we'll add an empty game object first and name it pipe. Okay. So now I'll add a pipe to this game object and it comes over here. I want to add it over here. But this is just the bottom pipe. Now to add another pipe, I'll drag it over here and then rotate it . Just make it minus 180 degree. Okay. These are the tools to move, rotate and scale. So I'm moving this. If you have any other doubts, like any sort of doubts, you can stop me anytime and ask, because if you don't follow along the process, then that's no point, there's no point of it. So now we make, so what I've done is I've added these two pipes and I've made a parent game object of these pipes. So this is the parent game object and these two pipes are now a part of that parent game object. So for example, if I want to move both the pipes together, if I don't make this parent pipe, I'll have to select both of them and then they'll get moved. But when I can just move this game object and it will move if I am . Okay. So now since we don't want just one pipe, right? We want like infinitely generating pipes till the player stops, right? So how can we do that? First, before that, we want to move the pipe. How do we move the pipes? So for that, we're gonna have to create another script. So we'll name this script move pipe. Sorry. We'll name this script move pipe. Then we'll open the script. So first of all, now we'll need another variable, since we have to define how much speed we want the pipes to move by. So we'll define a variable. We'll name the variable, we'll keep it float and we'll name it speed. Sorry. Okay. Now one more new thing. So there is something called as transform.position. This is transform.position. So what this is the position of your game object. Like in our case, we have this bird. So the position of the bird inside the game, what is that position? That is given by transform.position, and we can change this transform.position, this position, by editing it, by adding it adding speed to it, adding the normal time to it. I'll explain that. It's okay. So we can change the transform.position by so we'll write transform.position and it will by default access the variable, the game object that the script is attached to. So it will access the position of the game object that it is attached to, and then plus equals to. We know what plus equals to is, right? So it means equals to transform.position plus. So now this time we'll use vector3.left. Since we want it to, so I'll hover over it and it will show me -1, 0, 0. We want the pipes to move in this direction, right? For you, it will be this direction. So we want it to move in the left direction. So we'll use this vector 3 dot left, and then we'll multiply it by our variable speed, and we'll also multiply it by time dot delta time. Now, what is time dot delta time? Time dot delta time is the completion time in seconds since the last frame. This is the formal definition of it, but what it basically is that it's the time that is frame independent. So there are two types of ways you can measure time, right? Like the frames per second and the time that is normal time, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds, and you can measure it by frames. So instead of measuring the time by frames, what time dot delta time does is it measures the time by the normal time that is passing by in seconds. So that's what we are gonna do, and now it is done. It will update the position. Now let's try it. Now let's add it to our pipe game object, move pipe, and then I'll set the speed to 2. Now when I play the game, this pipe is moving, right? But now it's just one pipe, but we want infinite amount of pipes till the game is playing, right? So for that, we're gonna first we'll have to make a prefab for it. Now what is a prefab? So Unity's prefab system allows you to create, configure and store a game object complete with all its components, properties, values and child game objects as a reusable asset. So since we want to use it multiple times, right? We want to make it reusable. You won't want to create multiple like the same pipe game object multiple times. You just want to create it once and then store it somewhere, and then you can access it multiple times. So that is basically what a prefab is. So we'll store this as a prefab. It's very easy to do. You just have to, first we'll add a new folder. We'll name it prefabs. This is a good practice that you should have folders for all of your different prefabs and everything, or for your scripts, all of that. So you'll just have to drag and drop it over here, and you can see the icon changes to blue. This blue icon means that it's a prefab asset. Now we can delete it from over here because now we can access it anytime. Now what we'll do is we'll create a spawner. So we'll create a spawning script since we want to spawn infinite amount of assets, infinite amount of these. So we'll name it pipe spawner, and then we'll open the script. Now, okay. Okay, so in this, we'll access our pipe game object. So we'll name a public game object pipe, and then one more variable that we're gonna have to make is height. You'll have to, like, you don't want the pipes to keep generating in the same amount of height, right? That will just make it very monotonous and boring. You want the pipes to keep on changing their heights, right? So for that, we'll also make a height variable. Now we'll create two more variables. The first one being timer, and the second one being time interval. Now what are these two variables? The timer variable is the normal timer. We'll just add time dot delta time to it so that normal time passes by using this timer variable, and the time interval is the interval between two pipes. So we'll have to specify how much time after, like what time we want the pipes to instantiate. What is instantiate? I'll tell you. But we want these pipe prefabs to be created at what intervals? Basically, time interval is that variable. Now we have our variable set. We'll initialize the timer from 0, and then in the start function we'll keep it empty. In the update, we'll come to the update. Now we'll use an if statement and check that if the time interval, for example, whatever time interval we set, if it is greater than the current time that is passed by. If it is greater than that, we'll create a new prefab. Well, like we'll make a new prefab for it. So I'm writing that. So this is our if statement, and then a very simple line of code. I'll first write it and then I'll explain. So what I've written over here is I want a new game object to be instantiated. Now what is instantiated? Instantiate means that you're creating an instance of that game object. So what game object are we creating an instance of? Pipe game object. Inside this new game object, that is new pipe. So we are creating an instance of this game object, this pipe game object. Now we have to set the position that this new pipe is going to have. So what we write is new pipe dot transform, that we'll access its transform component and then its position component, and then we'll edit the transform dot position. We'll add a height. Now we want that randomization, right? So we'll add some height to it, that this height variable we created, right? So we'll add this height variable so that it has that randomization. I know this code can be a little bit tricky, but if you don't understand, I'll explain it after making the script once again. So we add a new transform dot position dot plus new. We create a new vector 3 0, because in the x component we don't want any change, we just want the change in the y component. So in the y component we create another function called random.range. So what random.range does is it takes the value of, it takes two values. For example, it takes minus some value and plus some value. I'll first write it and then I'll explain. So I'll input minus height comma height. So it takes these two values, height values, minus height and plus height. What it does is that if for example we have the height value set to 1.5, so it will take any random values between 1.5 and minus 1.5 and input and put any value inside this y component, so that we have that randomization, because we don't want the game to be monotonous. And then in the z component we'll again put it to 0. Oh, it's inside this. Okay, we'll put it to 0. And then since since it's an infinite scroller game, right, infinite runner game, so we don't want the game to lag or have any issues, so we'll have to destroy the pipes that are already outside the game scene, right? So for that we'll use destroy. So we'll destroy new pipe, sorry. Okay, and also we have to specify the time interval. This is 10. So after 10 seconds, the new pipe will get destroyed. And then okay, this is the if statement, and I'll initialize the timer to 0, and also yes, I have to write timer is equal to timer plus equal to time dot delta time. Okay, so what this does is that this sets the timer variable initially to 0, and then it will follow the normal second system. Instead of running it frames per second, it will run for the value of this timer. Now I'll save the script, and then I'll go to the I'll create a new game object. I'll name it pipe spawner. I'll place the game object over here. Yeah, it's correctly placed. And then I'll add my script pipe spawner to it, so that it is inside the game. Now timer I have to initialize by 0, height I can set to maybe 1.5, okay, and then time interval I'll again set to 2. Now I'll play it. Oh sorry, okay, I forgot to, so it gives an error. Okay, so the variable pipe of pipe spawner has not been assigned. So this is an error that I have mentioned a variable inside my script here, public game object pipe, but I have not told the script which variable I am trying to access. So for that I am getting an error. So what I'll do is I'll access my prefab, and inside this pipe spawner I'll drag this pipe. Now when I play it, it should not give me any errors, and the pipes are getting instantiated. It's a little bit messed up, but we'll fix it later on. But it's working. So how did you like this process till now? So shall we move on to the next script? All right. Okay, so now for when I play the game, it looks like the pipes are moving, but this ground is not moving, it is stationary. But we want to move this ground as well. So how do we do that? We'll go on to the animation tab, we'll create a new animation, and we'll name it, we'll make a new folder inside this, and we'll call it animation, and we'll call this animation ground moving. So how do we make the animation? We stretch this out, stretch the ground, and then we make it appear as if it's moving. How do we do that? So I'll change its position. So okay, first let me explain how the animation system works. So this is the animation. This red button helps you record the animations. This lets you play and pause it, and these are the frames. So at 0th frame, currently it is over here, but at the 60th frame we want to make it appear as if it's moving. So we move on, we are over here on the 0th frame and we hit record button. Now it starts getting recorded. So now we move to the 60th frame, and the 60th frame we want this to move over here. Alright, so now when I pause it, this will appear moving and this will appear inside the game. Now we play it. So it is appearing over here, but it's a little bit weird. Can anybody tell me how it is weird? Yeah, it's getting lag. That one was right. So why it is getting lag? Because we have not set its tangents. So we'll go and set its tangents to linear. So what are linear tangents? So every animation has an animation graph. So that graph is, these are the curves. But these curves currently are like this, that when it is not linear. So when the curve is linear, then it will not appear like that. It will have just one basic flow. Now when I play it, I made it linear, and now when I play it, it's a lot better. Okay, so currently it does not have any collisions, right? It is passing through. This is what I was trying to tell you, that it is not necessary for you to have collisions. You'll have to add these collisions. Now, first we'll fix this thing that is happening. These weird pipes are not completed. So how can we do that? We'll go to our prefab and we'll open prefab. We'll edit the prefab. We'll make it a lot bigger from both the sides, and then this problem won't happen. Now these pipes are working fine. So you already have this functional game just by writing 3 scripts, right? Now next what we are going to do is, let's add, okay, so you want the game to get over when you collide with any object, right? So for that you will also have to have some UI. You will have to have this game over text appearing when the game gets over. So for that we'll add a new canvas. So we'll add a canvas. I'll tell you what a canvas is. We'll name it game over canvas, and I'll tell you what a canvas is. So the canvas is the area that all UI elements should be inside. It is a game object with a canvas component on it. All UI elements must be children of a canvas. Okay, so every UI element. So what is a UI element? All these text or all of these buttons or all of these things which appear inside your game, all of it is part of UI. So now inside my game over canvas, I'll add this game over image. I'll name it game over image, and I'll change the sprite to this. Now I have to edit it over here. I'll make it a little bit bigger, and I'll place it over here. Now when I play the game, it has this game over written on it, but we don't want it to be enabled by default. So for now, okay, so but we also have to add a button. We have to add a button so that we can reset the game. So for that, we'll go to UI, button, and reset button. We'll name it reset button. and I downloaded a button yesterday. Okay, this is the button. I'll import it. So this reset button, I'll change its sprite to this button, and then I'll move it down and then resize it. And then we have this button as well over here. We'll remove the text over here, and now what we'll do is, so a little branding. We'll add GDSC logo to it. So since we are making this game in this session, we'll add the GDSC logo to our canvas as well, and we'll add it to another canvas, since we don't want the GDSC logo to just appear when the game is over. We want it to appear every time. So we'll make another canvas, and we'll name it GDSC logo canvas, and we'll add the GDSC logo to it. First we'll have to make an image, UI, image, and then we'll place it on the bottom. We'll add the GDSC logo. Now inside our game, and one more thing, we have to change our canvas scale to scale with screen size. Since we'll all have different phones and different sizes, so we'll have to change all of our canvases to scale with screen size, so that it does not appear constant on every phone. So that is what I did right now, and this image is coming over here. Now when I play this GDSC logo appears. We'll have to adjust it a bit. I'll make it a bit smaller. Okay, now it's better. Now next what we are going to do is, we'll have to manage the game. We'll have to tell the game when to start the game, when to pause the game. So for that we'll have to add another script. We'll create a game manager script. And I'll open the game manager script, and inside the game manager I'll create a reference to this canvas. I'll name it game over canvas. Now at the starting of the game, I'll set the time scale to 1. It can be, all these new terms can be a little bit overwhelming in the start, but you'll figure it out. It's not an issue when you get started with it actually. So what's time scale? Time scale is just that if you want to start the game or stop the game. So when you set the time scale to 1, the scale of the time would be constantly moving like the normal time. But when you set it to 0, your game gets paused. So when we lose the game, when we get collided, we want the game to pause, and then the game over canvas to appear. So for that we'll add time scale equal to 0. Now how do we do that? We'll add a new function to it. We'll name it game over. So the function is game over function. and inside it we'll add game over canvas dot set active true. We'll make it true. We'll make it appear, and then we'll set the time dot time scale to 0. Now we want another function over here. This is the replay function. So what the replay function will do is it will load the scene once again when the button is clicked. But for that we'll have to add another scene management to it. We'll access a scene manager dot load scene, and then we'll click, and then we'll load the first scene that comes up. Now we'll go back to this again, and this button, this replay button, we'll add an on click event to it. So what's an on click event? An on click event basically detects whether the button is clicked or not. So when the button is clicked, what we want to happen is that first we'll have to add another game object and make it game manager, and then attach the game manager script to it and set the game over canvas. Now in the on click event I'll add this game manager and I'll access this function. So whenever this function gets whenever this button gets pressed, this function will get called, and what is written inside this function? This replay. So it will replay this scene, the first scene that is there. So now I'll show you how it works. When I'm playing it normally, it is playing normally, and then I click on this and the scene gets loaded once again. This is how it works. Now by default we want our game over canvas to be not appear, and we want it to appear only when our game over is called. Now for that we'll again go to the flybird script, the first script that we created, and we'll take a reference of the game manager over here. Sorry. This is the variable, and then we'll use an on collision enter 2D. So whenever this bird collides, first I'll tell you what on collision enter 2D is. So on collision enter is called when this collider has begun touching another rigid body or collider. So this is a good example. For example, if these are two objects and these both have on collision enter, or one of them have on collision enter on it, and both of them have rigid bodies or colliders, when they both get collided, this on collision enter function will get called, and inside this on collision enter function we'll add that the game gets over. So inside on collision enter we'll write game manager dot game over. That's it. So whenever our bird collides with anything, the game will get over. So, but now this. So whenever, okay, there is an error that object reference not set to an instance of an object. So yeah, this is again because I have not added the game manager reference that I created over here. Now it won't give me any errors. Now I go back to the scene again, and when I collide with the base, the game gets over, this panel appears, and then I can restart it like this. But we have not added our colliders to our prefab. So what we'll do is we'll just go here and add a box collider 2D to it and another box collider 2D over here. Now the base game is completely made. What's left is the scoring part. I'll show you. You get through it. Now you collide with this game over place and this. So what's left is the scoring part. So how do we do that? So we create another script called score. We go to scripts, we create another C# script called score. Inside this script, we create a variable, float variable. We'll make it static because we don't want it to change. Public static int score. So static variables are variables that do not get they are static, they do not change during that. So initially the score should be set to 0. So we'll set the score to 0 in the start component, and then in the update component we'll get access to a text. So to get access to a text, we'll first have to get access to UI. So get component unityengine.ui.text, and then we'll set this text to this variable. Sorry, this variable will be set inside this text. So this is score dot. Now we'll have to convert it to string because text does not accept float value. It will only accept string values. So now, sorry. So now we open it. Now we create another canvas for the score. We'll name it score canvas. Inside the score canvas, we'll add a text to be displayed. And the text will have 0 as the initial value, and then we'll move it upwards. We'll change the font also. I added a new font. This was the font that the Flappy Bird font. So I've added this font. I'll increase the size a lot, and then I'll increase this scale as well. I'll make it like this, and I'll center it. Now when I play it, the score is coming over here, but it's very small and it's not updating. So we'll make it 100 or 150. Okay, but how do we make the score update? So for that, we'll have to add a trigger. So we want to add a trigger between these. First let me open the prefab. So we want to add a trigger between these two poles, two pipes, so that whenever the bird passes through these pipes, the trigger gets activated and we can set the score to be increased. Now I'll add a trigger. So for adding a trigger, I'll add a new game object, and inside this game object I'll add a box collider and I'll set it to trigger, and then I'll edit the collider and I'll move it upwards over here. So whenever the bird passes through this, Whenever the bird passes through this, it will trigger and this will detect collisions. Now to add these collisions, we'll add another script to it. So we'll name it add score. Inside the add score script, it's very simple. We just have to get an on trigger enter 2D function. So what this function does is, whenever this trigger is triggered, whatever the code inside it is written will get executed. So we just have to update the score. So we'll write score dot score plus plus. So we'll increment it by one value, and then we'll attach it to this game object where the trigger is there. So we'll attach the add score script over here, and then inside this text I'll attach this score script. Now you can see the score is getting updated. So our game is essentially made. So everything I think that is inside the game is made. We just have to make some adjustments, like the game over panel is appearing over this score. So how do we edit that? Let's see. It's whenever the game is getting over, it's appearing over the score. So we'll shift the score a little bit upwards. All of these minor adjustments must be done because it makes your game look really good. So I'll shift the text upwards over here so that your score is always visible. And then you set the game over canvas to disabled again. Now it will be much better. But I think the gap between two pillars is a lot right now. So when I was making this initially, I tried some values and I'll set the best values to it. You can also edit your own values. I'll change, I'll go to the bird and I'll change the gravity scale, because right now the gravity is too much, we don't want that. So I'll set it to 0.6, and then the other values, so the time interval should be 1.5 and the height should be 0.5 to make it even more challenging. So now it's a lot better. So congratulations, we just made Flappy Bird. So now what we are going to do is, we'll render it and then get it on all of your phones. So what we do is, we go to File, Build Settings, we change the build to Android. So to do that, we just switch the platform. So did you like the session, by the way? So I know that it will be a little bit overwhelming, but when you go home and you watch the recording again, you'll be able to follow along a lot better. So by the time it's rendering, are there any questions? Yes. Yes. Actually, yes. We could have used that. Yes. But it doesn't matter because I just set the value to 0, right? So yeah, you're right. We could have. Yes, हो जाता, बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हो. दैट्स अ गुड सजेशन. यस.
जैसे वो लोग इंटरनेट पे वो डायनासोर वाला गेम आता है क्रोम में, तो लाइक आफ्टर समटाइम स्पीड बढ़ जाती है गेम की, तो इसमें भी अगर हम वैसे करें तो कैसे?
यस, ये हम कर सकते हैं. ये हम इस सेशन में भी कर सकते थे, बट फिर वो और भी चीज़ें ऑलरेडी इतना कॉम्प्लेक्स था तो इसलिए मैंने नहीं किया. बट व्हाट हाउ दैट विल बी डन इज इनसाइड द अपडेट फंक्शन हम थोड़े टाइम बाद उसमें हम ड्यूरेशन सेट कर देंगे. हम जो टाइम डॉट डेल्टा टाइम को गेट कर रहे थे ना, उसी को हम इस तरह से कर देंगे कि आफ्टर अ पर्टिकुलर अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम द स्पीड लाइक द स्पीड बाय विच इट्स द पाइप्स आर स्पॉनिंग वो थोड़ा सा कम हो जाए. सो जल्दी जल्दी पाइप स्पॉन होंगी एंड ये चीज़ ऑटोमेटिकली होती जाएगी. सो मे बी इन सम अदर सेशन विल डू इट, or you can do it and you can like tell me if it if it worked for you. Now it is done, so we'll click on build. Just a second, I'll first check if everything is correct. So we'll click on build settings, build. We'll create another folder for builds and what should we name our APK? Any name? GDSC Flappy, all right. GDSC Bird, that's a good name. Okay. Are you all inside? Are you all inside that WhatsApp group, the mentorship group? Is there anyone who's not inside that group? Can we please assist these people to join? Because I'm going to send the APK in that group so that you all can install it. Arnav, can we please assist them to join? Okay, so by the time this situation is getting figured out, I'll tell you a little bit about my game.
Anmol,
हाँ.
sending you the group QR code on your WhatsApp.
Okay.
Can you open this page for it?
Yes. Okay.
And this so that you can enter.
Whoever is not inside this group. Has everybody scanned it? Is there anyone left to scan it? I take it as a yes. Okay. So how many of us are iPhone users? I'm sorry. You can look at your friends' phones.
I had a question. Can't we render the whole game again for iOS?
Yes, we can, but iOS rendering is not as simple as Android rendering. It requires a lot of permissions and all of that. We'll cover that in another session.
What about Xbox or PlayStation?
Yes, we can render it on all platforms. I'll show you. So we have all these different options. We can render it for PC, Mac, Linux, iOS, web, PS5, TV, PS4, Xbox One. So
iPhone users are the only ones who are
as of now, because I do not have the build file for iOS right now. नहीं, आप बाद में भी अपडेट कर सकते हो. देखो यहाँ पे स्विच प्लेटफॉर्म का ऑप्शन है ना, तो आप बाद में भी अपडेट कर सकते हो. मैं इसको किसी भी टाइम पीसी के लिए भी रेंडर कर सकता हूँ. So हाँ, यस हाँ, उसमें आपको इंस्टॉल करने के टाइम पे करना होगा. जैसे हाँ इट्स ओके कोई बात नहीं. जैसे अभी मैंने कभी टीवी के लिए यूज़ नहीं किया, टीवी ओएस के लिए, सो इट्स आस्किंग मी टू इंस्टॉल विद यूनिटी हब. Yes, I can install it later and then I can switch my platform. So has everybody joined the group? So I've sent the APK to your GDSC lead and she'll send it to the group. So you all can install the APK. Till that time, I'll tell you about my game. This is the game that I am working on. It's titled Envision, which means survival in Hindi. So it is about the protagonist who is stranded in a jungle and he has to survive a lot of different obstacles to like overcome a mission, which is the story is to be revealed as of later, but it is going to be released this December. So these are some screenshots from the game and it will be released on Steam. So are you all excited to play it? Yes. Thank you so much. Okay, so you can also scan this QR code. This is the link to a GitHub repository that can get you started with some good resources, and you can get started with these resources. I'll keep on updating this repository as I find new resources